Avengers Endgame is a movie fans have watched hundreds of times, but even after all the theories, breakdowns, rewatches, and fan debates, there are still details Marvel hid in plain sight that almost nobody caught. Secret cameos, timeline clues, visual callbacks that rewrite entire scenes, and foreshadowing moments the Russo brothers quietly tucked into the frame. Today, we're unlocking 10 things you absolutely missed in Avengers Endgame, details so subtle, so clever, and so important that they'll change how you see the movie forever. Before we begin, hit like, smash subscribe, and let's jump into the quantum realm. For a movie built on massive moments, Avengers Endgame is also packed with blink-fast cameos that most fans never caught, even after multiple rewatches. During the chaos of the final battle, if you freeze the frame and track the background movement, you'll spot unseen character flashes Marvel tucked behind explosions, dust clouds, collapsing structures, and CGI-heavy shots. Some are deep-cut heroes, some are returning side characters, and some are simply Marvel flexing its universe's scale. The Russo brothers themselves make a subtle appearance, but even more shocking is the writer cameo, Christopher Marcus, hidden in the support group scene with Steve Rogers. It's framed so naturally that your brain doesn't register he's one of the architects of the entire Infinity Saga. But the biggest "no way" moment. Harley Keener, the kid from Iron Man 3, showing up at Tony's funeral. Fans puzzled over who he was, because Marvel intentionally didn't spotlight him. Why? Because his presence wasn't fan service, it was a narrative connector. He represents Tony's legacy, the beginning of his arc, echoing at the very end. Marvel hides these faces not to trick fans, but to reward the ones who pay attention. Each cameo acts like a timeline stitch, threading Phase 1 through Phase 3 and closing the Infinity Saga with silent, emotional continuity. The quantum realm isn't just a time travel tunnel, it's a living Easter egg highway, filled with visuals so fast you'd need frame-by-frame playback to process them. When the Avengers jump, blurred shapes and distorted symbols flicker in the background. These aren't random CGI artifacts, they're deliberate quantum glyphs, tied to future MCU concepts introduced later in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Look closely and you'll catch visual nods to future characters, including structures resembling Kang's city, Chronopolis, long before he was officially revealed. There are even silhouettes that hint at creatures later seen in Phase 4's multiverse-expanding storylines, meaning the Russos were seeding plot threads years ahead. The time vortex references are another hidden storytelling gem. Janet Van Dyne warned Scott about them, and in Endgame, you can see swirling pockets of unstable energy, tiny storms in the quantum stream, signaling the danger of overshooting a timeline or dropping into a completely different reality. These microstorms validate everything Janet said. The brilliance is in how the Russos used the quantum realm as a narrative preview screen. Without saying a word, they teased future conflicts, future villains, and future universes. Fans thought the realm was just a backdrop, but it was actually Marvel whispering. The multiverse is coming. Pay attention. Marvel didn't loudly announce the rules of time travel in Endgame, they hid them in micro-details scattered throughout the film. The first major clue that alternate timelines splintered appears not in dialogue, but in the smallest visual shifts, changed street signs, different lighting temperature in background frames, and props that suddenly appear or vanish depending on where the characters travel. These are quiet signals of parallel branches forming the moment the Avengers interfere. Then comes the Ancient One's subtle warning, easily one of the smartest exposition moments in the MCU. When she pulls a single Infinity Stone from the timeline, the dark ribbon that spirals outward isn't just a metaphor, it's a literal visual instruction manual showing how fractured universes erupt like cracks in glass. Her calm delivery masks the sheer scale of the chaos the Avengers were risking. These clues also explain Steve Rogers' final timeline logic. The movie never spells it out, but background shots do, newspapers on Peggy's desk, small decor changes in their home, and the type of wedding ring he wears all hint he returned to a branch timeline, not the main one. The brilliance is that Marvel mapped the entire multiverse visually. You just had to watch the corners of the frame to see the future of the MCU coming. Endgame's script is famous for emotional punches, but beneath the drama lies a network of quiet foreshadowing lines predicting every major character's fate. Early on, Tony Stark repeatedly warns, "I lost the kid," and "I can't lose what I've built." These aren't throwaway lines, they subtly confess that Tony already suspects he'll pay the ultimate price. His entire arc is preparing the audience for a sacrifice he hasn't admitted out loud. Thor's journey hides its own emotional warnings. Long before his breakdown becomes visible, small lines reveal the depth of his depression, the cracked tone when he mentions failure, the hesitation when he hears Thanos' name, the awkward humor masking guilt. These hints set the emotional groundwork for Bro Thor, showing that his collapse wasn't comedy, it was trauma finally catching him. Characters constantly signal the ending. Black Widow's "Whatever It Takes" is delivered with a grim finality. Cap telling Tony, "You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play," isn't just a callback, it's dramatic irony setting up their reversed destinies. Even Nebula's short, chilling lines foreshadow Thanos' inevitability. The dialogue works like a coded message. Every emotional beat is a prediction wrapped in natural conversation. Endgame didn't just end with destiny, it spoke it out loud long before the final battle. Endgame is a movie built on giant emotional moments, but some of the most important storytelling happens in the background, hidden in frames packed with symbolism. In the Avengers facility, wall posters, discarded tools, and even reflections reveal the mental state of each hero. Tony's workbench, for example, is cluttered with half-finished tech, a quiet symbol of a man afraid to confront the future. Cap's environment, on the other hand, is orderly, structured, signaling his attempt to hold the team together even as the world collapses. Marvel also uses tech holograms as silent spoilers. Look closely at the projections during the mission planning scenes and you'll see outlines of locations, threat markers, and data clusters that foreshadow future villains introduced in later MCU phases. These quick flashes aren't decorative, they're breadcrumbs. The film also hides blink-and-you-miss-it shots that patch up plot gaps, like brief glimpses of secondary characters repositioning, or tech tools switching hands to explain how timeline missions actually functioned. Even costume tweaks tell their own story. Hawkeye's dark, jagged Ronin silhouette, Nebula's cracked plating, Thor's mismatched armor, all of these signal exactly where each character stands mentally. Their outfits aren't just designs, they're emotional diagnostics. Endgame's background visuals don't just fill the frame, they explain the plot without saying a word. The final battle of Endgame is so massive, so visually explosive, that most fans miss the micro-details secretly woven into the action. The first major hidden layer appears during the portal scenes. If you freeze and study the edges of each opening, you'll spot silhouettes of heroes stepping in before they're fully revealed, advanced warriors, Wakandan units, sorcerers prepping spells, even cavalry movements setting up the fight seconds in advance. Then there are the off-center fights happening while the camera focuses on the main trio. On the edges of the frame, you'll see side battles that tell their own mini-stories, Valkyrie circling airborne leviathans, Wanda dismantling entire strike squads, Korg and Meek running coordinated takedowns. These aren't background noise, they're character moments happening in secrecy. CGI animators also inserted blink-speed micro-events, Ant-Man launching himself off debris, Spider-Man webbing fallen allies out of danger, Wasp shrinking in and out between camera cuts. You can only catch these at quarter speed. But the real genius is how the battle choreography reveals deeper arcs. Cap fighting with Mjolnir shows perfect rhythm, as if he's been ready for years. Tony's moves shift from offensive to protective, signaling his final mindset. Thor's dual-wield stance mirrors his internal conflict, godhood and guilt in one frame. The battle isn't just action. It's storytelling through motion. Tony Stark's final moments in Endgame aren't just emotional, they're engineered with layers of hidden cues that quietly build toward his sacrifice. In the minutes leading up to the snap, Marvel plants subtle visual indicators, Tony's gauntlet flickers with unstable energy, his breathing becomes sharper, and the camera lingers on his eyes as if he's already processing a choice he hasn't made out loud. Even the framing shifts, Tony begins appearing slightly isolated in group shots, symbolizing the path only he can take. His final pose after snapping, slumped but kneeling, mirrors the exact stance he took in the cave in Iron Man 2008, a full-circle symbol, showing that he ends his story the same way it began, fighting with nothing but courage and will. Then there's the sound design trick almost no one caught, a faint metallic clink, the same sound that played when Tony forged his first suit, echoes underneath the score. It's subtle, almost subliminal, but it ties his entire journey into one sonic callback. And of course, his final line, "I am Iron Man," isn't just a catchphrase. It's an MCU code. It recalls his first press conference, the moment he broke the mold of superhero secrecy, the moment that started the entire universe. His last breath becomes the final punctuation mark on the story he created. Steve Rogers' ending isn't spontaneous, Marvel quietly telegraphs it through a chain of hidden clues. Early in the film, Cap lingers on the idea of moving on, but the way he says it feels more like someone testing a thought he's already been considering. Small pauses, soft expressions, and subtle hesitations reveal that he planned a different path long before the final mission. In the background of several scenes, props reveal the time travel mechanics behind his final return. The quantum GPS units on the workbench appear in pairs, suggesting Steve prepared an extra jump. Even the storage case for the PIM particles has one missing vial more than expected. Peggy's house scene holds some of the biggest secrets. Look at the window reflection behind her desk. Steve appears slightly blurred, suggesting a parallel timeline rather than the prime one. The decor, the radio, the wall photos, the aging of the curtains, doesn't match the exact era we saw in the Agent Carter series. It's deliberate. Marvel's telling us he didn't rewrite the main timeline, he lived in a branch. Finally, his shield handoff is a symbolic roadmap. The shield is spotless, restored, reforged, not battle-worn. It's a version from his new timeline, meaning Steve didn't just return with memories, but with responsibility. Passing it to Sam says everything: the past is closed, the legacy moves forward, and Steve's story ends exactly the way he always wanted, by choosing a life instead of a war. Endgame hides entire story threads in its production. Deleted shots show extra dialogue between Cap and Tony that explains their final reconciliation. CGI secrets include digitally added bruises and repaired props that clarify time jumps. Several emotional beats, like Tony's "I Love You 3000, were actor improvisations that reshaped character arcs. And some scenes, including Natasha's sacrifice, were reshot to shift tone, deepen stakes, and redirect audience interpretation. The biggest hidden clue: the final arc reactor flicker at Tony's funeral, shining once before going dark, symbolizing a closed loop. Marvel buried it to avoid spoiling multiverse plans. That tiny pulse reframes Endgame's ending: Tony's legacy isn't gone, it's echoing forward.